Welcome, everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 1st of July, 2026, and this is the Cluster API office hours. Cluster API is a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which can be summarized as please be excellent to each other, and if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you. So at the beginning of our meetings, we'd like to give a chance for new attendees or new community members to say hi. So I'll be quiet for a few seconds here. And if you would like to introduce yourself, please feel free to unmute and say hey.
Hey everyone. Uh, I I didn't plan on taking many minutes, but just a quick hello. I am a co-chair for SIG instrumentation, and I recently gained interest in cluster infrastructure. So I'm just from this particular meeting, I'm just hoping to get some context how things work and just have a smooth contributing experience to cluster infrastructure. Yeah.
Awesome. Welcome, Pranchu. And, I'm sure we might have, seems like the schedule is not too busy today. So maybe at the end of our regular agenda, we could answer some questions if you have any.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on and is there anyone else who wanted to say hello to the community or introduce themselves? I think everybody else has been here, so. Okay, we'll move on. Open proposal readouts. Do we have anyone to talk about I know, Fabrizio, you're about to talk about the code organization one. So do we have anyone to talk about the independent worker topology versions? Okay, we will move along to our regular agenda then. So first topic, Fabrizio, the code organization proposal.
Yeah,
Please.
before a very quick one about independent worker. So I think that soon we are going to convert uh, a trimmed down version of the document to a proposal. So making progress there.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so code organization. Yesterday or the day before I opened a proposal about code organization. Why now? Maybe if you can go to the preview of the proposal where there is a table. I know that you already reviewed, so you should. Yeah. Okay. So why now? For a couple of reasons, we are doing some changes that impact other organization, and it was a good opportunity to explain them. And we had a couple of issue PR recently asking to share more code. So I thought that it was a good moment to, try to make a point where we are going, etc., etc. And this is important not only it is important basically for everyone that is consuming cluster APIs and good dependencies. So if you scroll down, there is a table, and maybe this is all we need. So the key point is that we have to find a trade-off between the code that we are sharing, the guarantee that we are offering, and being able to change when we need. And so what we are doing is sort of mimicking what Kubernetes is doing. In Kubernetes, there are many sub-projects. Some of them are clearly for consumption, like Kubernetes API. And in Cluster API, we are doing like Kubernetes API or Client Go, etc., etc. Some other are not for consumption, like Kubernetes itself. What we are doing in Cluster API is something similar. We are not using sub-projects because using sub-projects basically requires toil. It is toil. It requires a lot of work, release coordination, etc., etc. So we are keeping only we keep going on with the mono repo, but within the mono repo we will have more Go modules. Some of them are already there since a long time, like cluster API/test. It is there since a long time. And if you are following this meeting, etc., etc., we recently added cluster API/API. Okay. The plan is to add another one, which is cluster API/util. And together with the top level cluster API, those are the four modules that people can consume. The key point is that there will be different guarantees for each one of them. So API, of course, it is subject to Kubernetes API guarantees. We cannot change API. We have to go to the deprecation, etc., etc. But it is also a Go module. So we apply the same, let me say, for Kubernetes, for cluster API/API and /util is those are the two modules that we intend for consumption, basically. This is where we try to give as much as possible guarantee. And in this table, they are sort of documented. And instead, for cluster API, top level repository, and API test, we make them, it is possible to consume them, but we are making clear that, hey, those are we those are mostly internals or really for people that are willing to have a tiger integration with cluster API with whatever this implies. So this document is sort of documented and making clear what kind of change we allow, etc., etc., and also what you have to do if you want some code that become public library. Just reach out to maintainer. So yeah, I hope this will help people moving around API, people needing to willing to have some more code shared, moving from internal to not internal, etc., etc. In my opinion, this gives some path for everyone. And yeah, just to mention, we are making possible to consume the core repository even with less guarantee. And this is more than what the Kubernetes team is doing. And we are doing this with a smaller team. So I hope people appreciate the effort that we are putting around this. That's it.
I absolutely appreciate the the effort as a maintainer of a cluster API dependent project. I think this is going to be really nice, and I said it on the review, but I appreciate all the work you put into this, Fabrizio and everybody else. This is really cool. Does anybody have questions or comments about this for Fabrizio? Well, I'm not seeing any hands going up immediately, but I something that I was intrigued about was definitely I I'm very curious about reuse of some of the code in CAPI controllers and whatnot, and maybe this is a forecast of the topic that I'd like to get into later. But I'm wondering, do you think can you envision a future where like maybe building something like a replacement for like the Bootstrap controller or something like that? Like we would have a primitive in the cluster API repo that then we could like an external party could use, to make it easier to get, to bootstrap their Bootstrap controller, for example, or something like that.
Uh, I don't know. So it is a trade-off. Whenever you commit to share something, you sort of you don't want to break people. So I think that there are some part of the code, like I don't know, how do we render cloud init? Maybe we can move this in a package. Now it is in an internal folder. Maybe we can move under /pkg or whatever, and basically tell, hey guys, you consume it, but we can do breaking changes. All the rules are documented, etc., etc. Making shareable an entire controller is the next level of complexity. I don't know if we will get there or when, but the idea is, I don't know, there was an issue about sharing the drain code that you use in CAPI.
Yeah.
So, and we have to evaluate requests one by one, but the idea is to have a code organization that make this possible and with clear rules.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have to consider case by case for now, I do not expect that we are sharing or making generic user controller.
Right.
This takes serious thinking because you have to, I don't know, think about how to do informers and stuff like that are strongly tied. So one step at a time, but at least we have a path.
Absolutely. You know me, Fabrizio. I'm already thinking about
Mm,
what's over the horizon on the
yeah.
highway. So like cool. Thank you.
Mm.
Anyone else have questions or comments about this?
Yeah, I think
I,
that Stefan bring it up
yeah,
also another angle. So uh, because it is a balance. From one side, we would like to, if the code is there, we would like people to use it. That's okay. From the other side, we would like to be free to change when we consider it necessary.
right.
So we don't want that sharing code become a constraint that blocks the project um, continuous improvement on the project. So, we have to find the right balance between those two forces, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part like in some respects, Cluster API is like a victim of its own success here because there's such a nice kind of actuation model for how the individual providers can write their controllers that like I kind of just want to see it everywhere, But yeah, it's an excellent point, and thank you, Stefan, for highlighting that as well.
Yeah, but definitely sharing in a more clean way stuff like cluster cache
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
consistently store that we recently this definitely makes sense. Now they are sort of hidden in the repository. Also, we have a util which is very confused. But yeah, we will get there. Stefan.
Yeah, also
Cool.
goes even one step further and maybe even a bit in the direction that Mike meant, which is we also have basically controller util nowadays. I don't know what we called it officially or if we already gave it like a name, but it's like reconcile wrapper or something.
Yeah.
And basically what you do there is that we have a wrapper around the controller runtime builder with which you build controllers. And that has like a bunch of features and they're just getting more and more, the more ideas we have. And at the moment, it's basically like shared code across all core CAPI controllers. We also start using it in CAPI, for example. So this would be another candidate, and that goes even more in the direction of, yeah, to some degrees standardizing how controllers are working in general.
Very cool. I think it's a great initiative, and I appreciate seeing all
Yeah.
this effort. I think it's just really nice evolution for the project.
Maybe I don't want to be too pushy, but if I look at this, basically, most of the work is already in progress or already there. Test, API. Util is an addition, is a sort of a small addition and wish. So I was wondering if we can maybe start thinking about a shorter, not a shorter, maybe start setting the consensus in 2 or 3 weeks. So we can use the time in between release to start doing some work or sooner. So, but yeah, I will bring it up again next week. But the idea is that there is not rocket science or breaking stuff or stuff that we did not already discuss it in the past. So it's just a form. Let me say, it's just formalizing work that we're already doing, and I was wondering if we can get it merged. We can start paying down some tech debt. I don't know, cleaning up the X folder that we started, and we're doing some. That will be a good opportunity to do it and get it out of the way. But yeah,
Yeah.
I will bring it up next week again.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, bringing it up again, and like, I personally don't have an objection to setting some sort of lazy consensus. But I took the opportunity to read it yesterday,
Mm.
and like, I don't think there's anything like super controversial in there. I think there's some,
Yeah.
well laid out plans. But I would encourage everybody else who's curious or does any work with Cluster API to kind of give it a read through. But yeah, I wouldn't have any objection to that.
Okay. In the meantime, I just pinged a few folks on the proposal. Let's give a few days for them to take a look.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Fabrizio. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll move on to the next topic. Okay. So I know this is like sometimes a controversial topic, but you know, I've been messing around with Ignition and CAPI and trying to play around with you know, some different designs for how Ignition could be, I think, handled in a better way than it's currently handled. And I'm trying to do that modifying the without modifying the current kubeadm config template. Like I would like to make a change that does not impact the core controllers. So I'm looking at ways to bring this in. And you know, I think creating a new bootstrap provider is certainly one way that this could be done. And I'm not sure if that isn't the best way that it should be done, but given the overlap with the current kubeadm bootstrap provider, this is kind of why I was asking about the code sharing and everything. So like the approach I've taken is kind of opposite to that. I'm trying to push the instance, what I'm calling like instance configuration. I'm pushing that out to the machine templates at the leaf edges of the cluster API object hierarchy. And so I'm developing a common API module that could be included by any provider that wants to provide alternate means of instance initialization. And what that looks like is, and this is the approach I'm currently taking, is that there is an API structure that you could include in your machine infrastructure template that would allow the user to select, you know, other options for initialization. And Cloud Init is the default, but you could select Ignition if you wanted to. And then into this module that you could include in your provider, I'm also giving some functions so that you could take the default Cloud Init secret that is created by the kubeadm bootstrap provider. You could ingest that and turn it into Ignition at the leaf edge, right? So you're not doing like the bootstrap provider is still just laying down Cloud Init, but at the leaf edge, you're interpreting that Cloud Init and transforming it into Ignition. And then this module could be like reused by providers who want to offer Ignition type support. The problem I'm having is that it feels a little dirty to me. Like it just feels like this thing that is kind of like going to be included by everybody, and there's like going to be a lot of work done at the leaf edges that is kind of like a common thing. And I just wanted to share the idea here to see like, am I taking a good approach? Do you think is there like a better way to do this, or maybe a more cluster API way or something? I don't know. I guess I'm just looking for some advice. Because I think I can make this work, but I'm not sure it'll be the best design though for people who want to implement it. And I guess at some level too, I know, you know, Cluster API has kind of stayed away from this, you know, making any kind of opinions about this decision. But I guess like what I'm talking about is like an instance initialization step that happens even before we get to like the kind of Kubernetes step. And you know, right now the assumption is that if you're using the kubeadm provider, you know, that would be Cloud Init, you know, unless you turn on the Ignition stuff, which is like Ignition v2 or whatever. I don't know. Does it make sense, like the direction I'm going? Kind of looking at like Stefan and Fabrizio.
I can give them. So just to ask this again, is it correct that Ignition, the final format for Ignition basically depends on the operative system that we are using?
As I understand it, and I'm not an expert, there is very much an operating decision that needs to be made early in the ignition process, or the butane ignition process. I'm not an ignition expert, so you'll have to forgive me a little bit, but at the very least, a decision needs to be made about like, are you using the Flatcar format or like the Fedora CoreOS format? So I think at the very least, there's some sort of decision about what format you're using. I don't know that you necessarily need to say, this is the operating system I'm using. That's a good question to follow up on.
Yeah, but at the end, let me say, even if you start, the key point is that there is some correlation between the final format that you need to pass the machine and the and what you have to generate. So, frankly speaking, if I think at these connections, at this tight connection between what you need and the OS, it seems to me that it will be nicer if Ignition is capable to perform this conversion when the machine boots. And so at this point, Ignition is on the OS, it has all the information, it just does a pre-parsing thing. And this will prevent basically to you to be forced to leak the information that you need inside the infrastructure provider. So you need to understand the OS family or whatever, which is maybe not always so well known in the infrastructure provider, because in theory it is agnostic to the provider. And so in my opinion, it is the lower we are in the stack. So you were talking about something like the last mile or the last level of the chain. In my opinion, you are not yet at the very last level of the chain, which is the machine itself. The infrastructure provider is one layer above. But it's definitely better than what we have. What is the main concern from what you are proposing? Is that, what happened when, I don't know, we want to move from Ignition 3 to Ignition 4. All the infrastructure provider has to change. This library has to change. All the infrastructure provider has to bump, etc., etc. So we are bubbling up. We are just moving the problem that we have in copy one layer down.
Right.
But maybe we can do a little bit more. But that's my
and
my opinion.
I just want to go back to something you're talking about. You're right. Like machine is the next layer down, but like the user doesn't have an ability to make, like, the infrastructure machine template is where the user would make a choice about how the machine is created, right? Like, I mean, the user is not going to change something on the machine before it gets booted or something like that, right?
Yeah, but if you think, I don't know, for instance, in CAP-V, in the infrastructure machine, there is nothing that tells me, oh, we are using Ubuntu, we are using Flatcar or
Well, right.
or Ubuntu or whatever. So,
but you specify like an image that you're using for the
we specify the image, but
I mean, we can parse the image name to figure out if it's Ubuntu, right?
Well, right, and
yes,
I think this is where
it is brittle.
Yeah, this is where this is kind of a similar type of transaction, right? Like if I'm the user and I'm specifying an image, and I know that image uses Ignition or something like that, or wants to use Ignition, then it's like my responsibility to set up the infrastructure machine template to also engage Ignition or whatever, right? I would love to grab it at a lower level if possible, but it seems like this is like the point where the user could make a decision to say, I want to use Ignition here. Like, okay, so like that seems like a good place to make the decision. Sorry, I just saw Nolan's question about, is there a different butane ignition dialect per distro? As I understand it, Nolan, there's like two main varieties. There's like a flat car variety and an FCOS variety. That's my understanding. Although that might be the ignition, not the butane. I'm again, I can't say enough that I'm not an ignition expert. But okay, so it seems like for now it might be okay to kind of like add this option at the machine template level. A user could then say, I want anything that comes out of this machine template to use this ignition configuration. And then I just go back to my other problem of like trying to reverse the templating that's been done for the cloud init stuff, because that's kind of how I'm working around it. I'm taking the cloud init format that comes out of cap PBK or cap BK, and then kind of reversing that and turning it into an ignition config, out at the edge, basically. Okay, I think this has been helpful. I see a hand is going up. Matt, please.
Yeah, it just on the, I mean, I haven't thought about that hard, but it doesn't sound like it sounds like that's a co-location of responsibilities that makes sense at some level. And I know you're aware of all the work that never bore fruit, but I wonder if it's worth asking like Thilo From and Johannes, who worked on the proposal we never quite finished about Ignition v3 support, what they think of this.
Oh yeah, like I've been communicating with Thilo and Matthew,
Oh, okay, great,
and
great.
we've been continuing to have the node work, the working group, and they're kind of on board with this design that I'm currently pursuing. So I'm going to try to make this work, and honestly, Thilo's like, don't even worry about the V2, just go right for V3. But
Yeah,
the way I'm setting this up is I'm trying to make it so that like the demonstration I want to do to begin with is that I can take a current cluster API, using V2 ignition, and I can move that decision out to the infrastructure machine template, and then I can like not make any decision about it in the kubeadm config template. I can just say the format is the default format, right? I don't even,
yeah. Because
yeah, like,
that was really the sticky part that it did seem
right,
like we were never going to get past, is refactoring that is
right.
not kind of a non-starter.
And in fact, in my approach, the next version of the kube API that we could do, like I would see us deprecate the ignition stuff if possible, I would see us deprecate the ignition stuff in the config template and move it out to these edges where like any provider who's supporting ignition can include these things in their provider,
Cool.
basically.
Yeah.
Because I realize like I have a feeling like for cap, for like cap V or whatever, for the VMware, like you wouldn't care about this at all, like, right? You wouldn't want to have this in cap, like you just wouldn't need it or whatever, right?
Hmm.
Or some providers just might not even have support for it. So, and some providers might want to default to ignition. I don't know.
Never say
Trying to
never.
what? So yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I'll keep going, and hopefully in the next like month or two, I'll have a demo to bring back here and show people a little bit. Appreciate the discussion. Thanks. All right. So we've got about 29 minutes left, and I know Pranshu, you had mentioned having some questions about getting started with Cluster API. Did you have any specific questions you wanted to ask us, or could we explain anything, make it a little bit easier for you?
Um, I I don't have anything specific right now. I'm just trying to go over these issues and see what's and actually from this call as well to see what's happening right now and what's on priority, so I can contribute to that. I am keeping an eye out for the shadow program that's about to happen, I believe, next month in August. So probably going to enroll in that as well. But I apologize. I don't have anything that would need the acumen of this call as of now.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I think in general, like I'll just say as a general proviso or advisement, like the Slack channel that we have in Kubernetes Slack for Cluster API is very active. So if you ever have questions, that's a great place to go reach out. And you mentioned the Shadow program. The Cluster API has a release team as well, and that release team is a great place to get experience about how we release Cluster API and everything that goes into it. So that's another great way to get involved. I think if you were to look at today's meeting as just a one note sample of what is going on in the community, Fabrizio's code organization proposal is top priority. What I'm talking about with the ignition stuff is kind of an experimental thing that's going on. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening in the Cluster API community, and yeah, I would just say, if you're curious, keep coming to these meetings and, reach out in the Slack. There's a lot of friendly people in the community.
Yeah, definitely. I'll make sure to do that. Thank you, Minko. You've been a great host.
Yeah, cool. No, and I notice you're a Red Hatter as well. So feel free to reach out to me or Nolan's in here as well. Feel free to reach out to any of us on the Red Hat Slack if you're looking to connect with resources inside Red Hat for Cluster API. That's kind of side business.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, with that, then we will move on to provider updates. Oh, and I realized I put all that stuff in the open proposal read. I should have. Anyways, Matt, let's do a proposal. Let's do your provider update for CAPZ.
Sure, it's not probably that interesting, but since this is the only place where maybe somebody would watch the recording, I thought I would get it out. We did a whole bunch of releases in CAPZ, mostly for patches to fix CVEs and to bring everything up to speed with the latest CAPI patch releases. We also have CAPI 1.14.0 alpha PR working, so we're finally at the point where we're trying to stay current with everything, which is great. And if you're looking closely, we did a 125 minor release, and then only like 5 days later, we did a 126 minor release. That's kind of lame, but we had to do it essentially because the guts of CAPZ, the thing that actually calls Azure, is a separate project, Azure Service Operator. And there was an API that if you're using the preview version of AKS, they shut it off today. And so we had to do a hurry up release so that people have an upgrade path if they need to, so that they can continue working with the preview API for Azure Kubernetes Service. It's a little unfortunate we had to do that, but at least there is a way forward. And maybe the Venn diagram, the intersection of people who are using the cutting edge preview service and CAPZ is effectively zero, but at least we have a way forward for people who are trying to do that. So that's all.
Yeah, gotta love the emergency patch release, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you, Matt. All right. Any questions or comments for Matt about the CAPZ releases? All righty. Well, that brings us to the end of our regularly scheduled agenda. So unless folks have ad hoc topics, I figure we'll take back about 23 minutes of our day here. So going once, going twice. All right, we'll call it a meeting. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Check out Fabrizio's code organization proposal, and yeah, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for hosting. Bye-bye.